Cheers, everybody. Bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum ba-da-da-dum ba-da-da-dum. It's the Wimbledon music. The Wimbledon has started on the television. It is hot, hot, hot here in the UK. Luckily, my brother blessed us with an air conditioning unit last week, so the house is cool and almost acceptable temperature-wise. So we're kind of okay. I've got a little fan next to me here as well, so giving me a little bit of extra cooling here. But it's all good. I will turn the sound of Wimbledon off. How are you doing in this heat? I did post a message yesterday to see if how everybody was doing in the hot, 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 and I send a little picture of the underwater in the sea scene, which I thought was quite cool and quite cooling, in fact, from a subconscious perspective. And maybe that's what we'll talk about today. Training your subconscious. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm sure we talked about this before, but essentially, obviously, we've had, in fact, there we go. We can start talking about this, can't we? So I haven't done my cup thing for quite some time, or my brain cup thing. This actually comes from, who does this come from originally? Bob something. It might come back to me later. Anyway, he does this little stickman diagram of his version of it. And I have a slightly different version of it as well. But I always talk about how we've also got a brain and our body and stuff. So we've got a heart down here and we've got our brain up here, and our heart kind of knows what it wants and what it feels and so forth. And a brain is kind of this processing unit. So I like to think of it as a filter process. So we have this filter process. So our brains will filter the world around us in certain ways. This is a kind of NLP concept, but it's valid and completely valid as well from a neuroscience perspective as well. When we're looking around us at the whole world around us, there's so many things in the world around us, so many noises and sounds and all that kind of stuff. We have to filter it somehow, and there are three main ways that we filter it out. So we filter out. I haven't looked. I'm going to have to Google it. It's a long time since I looked at these things. So NLP 3 ways to filter. There you go. I can't remember off the top of my head. I've just blanked out on them. Primary filter. Here you go. Deletion, distortion, generalization. There you go. So we delete things that we're not interested in, we're not important about. That's the classic part of law of attraction kind of style stuff. When you are driving around town and you drive past a petrol station, you kind of ignore it. You just kind of blank it out as you're driving past. But if you're driving in your car and you're very low on petrol and you've already had the beep and maybe the thing that's on there telling you how far you got to go is already on like 0, it's not showing anymore, and the arrow is in the red on the little thing like this. You're looking for a petrol station. You're desperately looking around. Obviously, slightly easy with GPS these days, but you'll be looking for a petrol station. You see a petrol station, you go, fantastic, there's a petrol station, I'll go and find it. But if you were driving along the same piece of road without looking for a petrol station, you wouldn't see a petrol station. Same sort of way as if you're driving along again, if you're not a driver, for example, you're a passenger, and you start looking for yellow BMWs, for example. It's a fairly unusual colour for a BMW. But if you start looking for them, you'll start finding them. Or you just look for yellow cars in general. My mum was talking last night about how one of my great aunts, I think, had a yellow car and called it Daffodil. Obviously, for obvious reasons. But if you start looking for a yellow car, it's a fairly unusual colour for a car, you'll start seeing them. Whereas if you're just driving around normally, if you start looking for a blue car, for example, you'll kind of ignore all the yellow cars, you'll only see the blue cars. So that's deletion. And the next one is distortion. So we'll distort the world around us to fit our preconceived beliefs. So if we believe that things are going to be a certain way, we will distort what we're looking at and what's going on around us to fit our preconceived beliefs. Can't think of an obvious example of that off the top of my head right now, from a slightly normal everyday perspective, at least anyway. But I'll show you a little task in a moment, which will help you see how that works in your own life, because we'll use the room around us. And then generalization is the third part as well. So we'll generalize things. We'll say like all trees are green, and the sky is blue, and all swans are white, for example. Now, these are all things that, well, generally, most people would agree with you. You go, oh, yeah, yeah, all swans are white, yeah, and all green trees are green. Yeah, of course they are. And the sky, of course, it's blue. Yes, of course it's blue. But it's not always, is it? There are red trees, and in the autumn, there's all sorts of colours of trees. So they're not always green. And not all swans are white. There are black swans. Famously, there are black swans. There's a film called Black Swan, in fact. What was the other one? Sky is blue. Sky is blue most of the time, but when it's cloudy, it's not blue, is it? It's kind of white or grey or whatever. And then at sunset and sunrise, it goes all sort of pinks and purples. And then, of course, if you've got the northern lights, you suddenly get all these huge greeny, blue, greeny, pinky colours. Actually, what's it? Green and yellow, I'm not sure. Anyway, you get the idea. Sure, it's blue most of the time, but not always. And that's the point, is just a generalization. So you generalize these things to clump things into groups that make it easier to process the world around us. Because when we're looking at the world around us, there's millions and millions of bits of information and data and information and so forth. And we kind of just ignore it all, really. But our subconscious is doing all this work, processing all that stuff around us. And we could do a little task here for you to do this and experience this situation. What I want you to do is look around the room around you right now, or you can look at what's going on behind me if you want as well. You can do the same sort of thing, and look for anything that is red in the room. Did that the wrong way around, didn't I? Look at everything that's green in the room. Green shirt, blue on the flag over there, green plant over there, a little bit of green in the Camino thing over there. Where else we got? Oh, blue. I said blue. Oh, no. Blue, that's blue, that's green. I'm looking for greens, aren't I? Looking for greens. There'll be greens on these Rubik's Cubes over here. There'll be some greens on these books over here somewhere. Okay, so now what you want to do is, once you've now got all those greens in your head, close your eyes and tell me how many of those green things did you see. So when you close your eyes, think how many of those green things you see. Okay, so there was a shirt, and there was the plant, and there was the Camino thing. And keeping your eyes closed at this point, and there's several of the books, and I could name them specifically. There was some of the Rubik's Cube stuff. Okay, now while your eyes are still closed, tell me all the red things that you saw in the room while you were looking around. Harder, isn't it? Without opening your eyes, try and count them. Try and think, what was red? What did I see? Now, I can remember that there's a red, white, and blue flag behind me, so I know that there's red on there, and I know that the Rubik's Cube has got red on it, so there must be some red on the Rubik's Cube, but I didn't actually see it. I definitely did on the flag, not least because I knew I was going to be doing this going forward. What else was there? I suppose there would be some books, but I don't remember any particular books that had red on them. But you understand what I'm doing here. And when I open my eyes, there's the plant pot as well. And there's a big Rubik's Cube over there as well. There you go. I didn't even spot that there'll be green on that. Yes, there are 5 green lumps on that big Rubik's Cube over there, which I didn't even spot, to be fair. What's that up there? Is that green up there? That's green. That's actually blue. There's some green on the lamp, I just noticed as well. Yes, but there you go, red there. There's red there on the cube. So yeah, there's a very obvious red book just right there. There's an orange. Is that a red? That's distortion. Can I count that as a red? Not sure. Can I count that as a red? It's got a big white bit on it. I don't know. That's distortion. That's what's going on with distortion. So as soon as you start doing, is that red or is that orange? Because on a Rubik's Cube, there's an orange side and a red side. That is actually orange. That is actually orange. But underneath it there, it's orange and, this way here, orange and red. There's a juggling cube over there. That is, now, I don't know whether that's red or orange. It's tricky. But again, distortion. It's like, I want to count it as red, so I'm going to count that as red. I'm going to count that as red, and count that as red, and count that as red, etc., etc. So you can start counting things as red because you want them to be red, and that's distortion. So you're making things look red or think of them as red, even though they're not actually necessarily red. Now, obviously, that's a sort of contrived experience, an example there, but that's the general idea of what's going on inside your brain. So you're doing all these things, deletion, distortion, generalization about the world around you. And then you're filtering those through. The next level down is then the filter through your belief systems and things that you know about the world. So obviously you've already generalized and distorted based on your belief systems, but then there's your core feelings as well about, I'm just going to look at this thing and say distortion. Misrepresent reality by altering or twisting our sensory data. Well, then, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's kind of subconscious. And what I talked about in the past is thinking about your brain like this. You're getting the conscious, your logic brain up here, and that goes through a filter, and your subconscious is this kind of cup here. So you're kind of filtering it through, and it's trying to get through this subconscious down to your heart. So when you want your heart and your true things that you want in life to come out, it kind of has to go through this filtering system of the conscious brain, the subconscious brain, and then what I call the unconscious brain, which is underneath the subconscious brain. Because the unconscious stuff is things that have come from your environment, from the way you've grown up, things that just feel wrong, even though you don't really know why. Like, for example, and the classic thing about this, of course, was religious beliefs when you've grown up. So if you've grown up in a Muslim faith, for example, you'll have a whole thing about Eid and is that the light show? I'm not sure. And Ramadan and that kind of stuff. And again, excuse me if I'm mixing up my religions here. And then Christianity, you've got Christmas and Easter. And I don't know how much crossover there is here, but in Jewish faith, you've got Hanukkah, and the candles thing that you got going on there. And there's something about having a wooden block on the side of a house when you go into it. I don't know what that's about. But these are all things that I just don't understand at all. But if you were from one of those faiths and you came into a Christian faith house, they wouldn't have these things. And you go, oh, this is a bit weird. It just feels wrong. It feels odd. And in the same way, when we go to well, actually, you can even do the temperature. The temperature here is really hot today. England just generally is not a hot country. So when things are hot, it feels a bit weird. But when you go on holiday to, say, the south of Spain, and it's hot, you just expect it. You know it's going to be hot. You planned for it. You're prepared for it. You're expecting it. And when it's not hot, it's then weird, isn't it? I went to Spain a couple of years ago in December. And it's normally kind of not hot, but warm and sunny and nice. And I was there, and it was raining. And it was thunderstorms. And it was like, oh, this is a bit weird. What's going on here? Why is it like this? It's never like this normally. And of course, and you get that sort of snapshot when it's been good, it's been good, it's been good. Beautiful example for me, from a distortion perspective, this is almost. I used to work for an American company in Philadelphia, based in Philadelphia in America. And I'd been there for like company dues and kickoffs and stuff in January 4 or 5 times over the years. And of course, it'd always been snowy, cold, wintry. And so every time I went there, I packed for the winter. I thick coats and, woolies or jumpers or whatever, sweaters as Americans would call them, heavy boots and all that kind of stuff. And then one day we were going over to Philadelphia, invited over, and we went in the summer. And it never even occurred to me. I just packed my bags the same way as I'd always packed to go to Philadelphia. Going to Philadelphia, it's always snowy, it's always cold. When I go to Philadelphia, and I turned up in Philadelphia in the middle of summer. I walked off the plane, and it was like walking into an oven, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a bit of a problem. I have got no clothes for summer whatsoever. I've got nothing that was designed for hot weather, and it was horrifying. It was, it was like I had to go out shopping and buy shorts and t-shirts and loose-fitting shoes and stuff. I had to buy a whole wardrobe, which was like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. So yeah, and even though somebody had said to me, come over to Philadelphia, we'll actually go and spend a day down by the beach. Somebody had even said, we're going to go to the beach. And it still didn't cross my mind to pack for a beach. It's bizarre. Anyway, so I distorted my world. My worldview was distorted. My subconscious took over and packed my bags for me. I didn't even think about it. And then, of course, you've got that's kind of where I'm talking about subconscious and unconscious beliefs come into it here. So your unconscious is a bit deeper. It's a sort of feeling rather than your subconscious. So that was kind of the subconscious going on there, because I knew about it. And if I just paid a bit more attention, I could have overridden the subconscious. But overriding that deeper unconscious bias that you have is much, much harder, because that's something that you've kind of lived with your whole life, and you've never really articulated it, you never really understood it. But it just feels wrong to you. And this is a classic example of this sort of thing would be where racism comes from. You just feel like, I don't want to have anything to do with them kind of feeling. And also deep hatreds as well for certain types of people. I mean, you've got it going on like that. We're literally just talking about a guy at Glastonbury who said like death to the Israeli army or something like that. And that's kind of like a deep visceral kind of hatred, which if he thought about it a little bit more and he paid a bit more attention, he would know that actually just saying that is wrong. I mean, okay, it might be terrible what they're doing and so forth, and but wishing that upon other people is just that's not good. It's not good thinking. You can wish they want to stop it and wish that people would win, so a bit more positive kind of outcomes. But wishing ill on other people, especially people who are not really choosing it, they're being kind of okay. There's nuances here, of course, because then we go back to the whole, all it takes for a bad man to win is lots of good men to do nothing. That kind of that phrase that comes out. But there's kind of limits to this, and again, I always think about this classic, it's classic now anyway, comedy sketch where it's two Germans during the war, and they're just chatting to each other, and one of them says, "Do you think maybe we're the baddies? We're the baddies. We're the ones in the wrong. Do you think that's possible?" Because of course, again, you get indoctrinated. So I saw this. Where did I see this? This was somebody had spent like a couple of weeks in North Korea, and he said that when he came out of North Korea, he felt like he had been indoctrinated by the North Korean propaganda. And he said it was amazing how powerful it was, because I didn't realize I was being indoctrinated until I came out of that environment, and then suddenly I thought, oh crikey, my unconscious feelings have been influenced by the North Korean propaganda network. And you can see how this is valid, for example, for people, for example, in Russia, where maybe they think that they are open-minded and they see the rest of the world and they've got this, but deep-seated is they've still got this this Russian propaganda thing going on, where they think that it's everybody's against Russia, for example. Not wrong at the moment, of course, but it's not against the Russian people, it's against the Russian leadership. But the Russian leadership, of course, are influencing the Russian people. You see how these things work. And of course, they would say the exact same thing about us. They'd say the Western politicians are influencing and are using propaganda to influence us in the West to have a negative feeling towards Russia. And they may well be right to a certain extent. But again, when you look at facts and look at the details and stuff, these kinds of visceral, unconscious biases break down when you start looking at the actual facts, assuming, of course, that you're open and minded enough to be able to look at the actual facts and not just dismiss them and distort and delete and generalize to a certain extent those facts, to ignore the bits that don't feel right to you. Which is this is the beauty of, or not the beauty, the downside of all this stuff. This is where conspiracy theories come from, and why people who believe in these conspiracy theories start looking at evidence and deleting things that don't fit the belief of this conspiracy theory, distort things that maybe fit slightly, and they'll just twist it and say, well, this is it. Flat Earth's a beautiful example of this. There was a thing called the Final Experiment recently, where all the in fact, let me think about this. Actually, yeah, okay, we'll come back to another example, the zombie experience, a little bit later on. But so in the Flat Earth experience, they had this the Final Experiment. So the Flat Earth was basically saying you can't have 24-hour sun in the South Pole. It doesn't make any sense on a flat Earth, so it can't be possible. It's all a fake, and anybody who says that it's possible is talking nonsense. And so they took a couple of flat earthers and obviously some scientists, and took 360-degree cameras and drones and all this kind of stuff, and they had loads of people down there. They flew them all to the south, onto Antarctica anyway. And had it all set up and live streamed, and had people filming the people who were filming, and had all different angles and cameras and so forth. Had it all running basically, and just essentially proved that there was a 24-hour sun. And then you start getting the flat earthers saying, but it was all inside a big dome, and it was all fake and stuff, and the breath wasn't showing like cold air as much as it should have been. And then somebody explained, well, yeah, but that's because at the South Pole it's not actually a damp environment, it's a dry environment, and so your breath doesn't do that moisture thing. And then somebody said, oh yeah, but one of the pictures they did have moisture coming out of their mouths, a cloud, they had a moisture cloud coming out of their mouth. And then he said, well, yeah, but that was because he had a vape pen. He was smoking a vape pen. And then somebody said, so you're using the vape pen to fake the it's like, oh yeah, you're completely distorting things, and you're deleting things, and you're making it fit your belief that there is a flat earth, because it's like, oh, I'm looking for evidence that supports my belief that's a flat earth, and anything that might possibly support my thing and defeat the globe earth kind of idea, that's, I'm going to accept that. And that's what happens. They'll distort and delete things that don't fit their belief system, and then only look at the things that do fit their belief system. And of course that same thing is happening for us every single day throughout our lives. We're just not aware of it most of the time, and it's not as stark and obvious as somebody else challenging our world beliefs and world views. And in fact, quite a lot of the time we'll find ourselves in little echo chambers and little bubbles where we're surrounded by people who also believe the same things that we believe. And again, we come back to the religion thing. If you're in a certain religion and everybody else believes the same religion, you're going to think this is the only way, this is the only possible thing there is, until somebody comes along and challenges you. And then you start going, oh, okay, well, that can't be right. And then you'll use all the evidence you've had before in the past, and you'll delete, distort and generalize again about that somebody coming in and challenging your world beliefs and your world view. And so it happens again. So then what happens, of course, is that we have this happening in our lives, in our just normal everyday lives, but we don't get people challenging this. We get things happening in the world around us that challenges us, and then we just ignore, we delete, distort and generalize about those things around us. So for example, we'll say, this is a classic thing on the luck thing. I think I've talked about this before. Derren Brown did a cool experiment once in a town. I'm sure definitely talked about this before, where they had a lucky dog. There was a statue, and they said this dog is lucky. If you touch it, you get lucky, and all this kind of stuff. And there was a guy in the town who said, "Oh, I'm never lucky," and his world view was that he's never lucky. And so then Derren Brown set up lots of situations where he could be lucky. He put a £50 note on the floor right in front of where he was about to walk, and he just walked straight past it, didn't see it at all. He had a survey person in the street asking people survey questions. And this guy was a butcher, and so he was asking questions about meat. And he said, if you can answer 10 questions in my survey, you'll win a TV or £50 again or whatever. And so people came along and they asked them questions. It's like, can you name 3 cuts of beef, for example, and can you, what's the baby of a sheep called? that kind of stuff. They're fairly easy things that most people could answer. And of course, people were coming along, they were answering the questions, and they were getting the money. And of course, you'd think a butcher would definitely get all these questions right, no question about it whatsoever. And then the survey person would come up and say, would you like to answer the questions? Oh no, I never win anything, so I'm not even going to take part in your survey, even though the questions were specifically designed for him so that he could definitely win no matter what. Then he started getting this van driving around saying, in my case, John Denley phoned this number. And again, he looked at it and went, oh, okay. And then kind of just ignored it. He's like, he deleted it from his mind. It's like, what? You're just ignoring all of these things that are, admittedly, they're not lucky, but anybody else would see them as being lucky if they happened to this other person. And it was just hilarious to watch this guy basically just not believe he could be lucky at all. I think he was the guy in the end who took a chance on the dice, and he didn't actually win in the end. I could be wrong on that one. Anyway, I'll find the link and pop it below here. But if you just search Derren Brown lucky dog, I think probably will do it. So in fact, I'll do it. Derren Brown lucky dog. There we go. On YouTube. Secret of Luck, there you go. Yeah, and go and look at those on YouTube. You'll find them, no problem at all. Derren Brown, spelled with a D, D-E-R-R-O-N. Derren Brown or Lucky Dog. You'll find it. Go and watch it. It's fantastic. And yeah, in fact, I will. I'm pretty sure it is. Oh, I can't remember. I don't want to look it up now because we're busy on this thing and we're about to wrap up and finish. So yeah, so we've got this distortion about the world around us, and our worldview is tainted by this subconscious, and then our unconscious, which is below that. And so we've got to break through. If we want to break our logic through to our heart, we've got to break through that subconscious, we've got to break through our unconscious, and then we can get to our heart from our logic. Our logic and our heart, we can connect those two things, but we've got to break through the subconscious and the unconscious brain like this. And I actually said this once before, and somebody said this was a really kind of cool way of doing it. Is when you have a relationship with somebody, when you start a relationship with somebody, and they've got their own set of beliefs and their logic and their subconscious beliefs, and you've got your own set of subconscious beliefs and your unconscious beliefs, and you first meet each other and you start working together and you start talking to each other, and you find, actually this was on Glastonbury last night, Rodriguez, Olivia Rodriguez, is that her name? Anyway, the headline singer on the Pyramid stage last night at Glastonbury. She was talking about, she's American, and she's fallen in love with this boy from London. And he said, when we're having this relationship with each other, he keeps on calling me, "Oh, you're so American," because she doesn't understand like English. We had back to what we were talking about before. She's come from an American background, build up and stuff, and she's got a whole bunch of things in England that she just doesn't understand, like customs and standards and norms and so forth here in the UK. She was talking about baked beans on baked potatoes, for example. It's like, oh, that's just baked potato with baked beans in it. Ooh, that's weird. And how she pronounces things differently. She talks about the trunk of a car instead of the boot of a car. She talks about the sidewalk instead of the pavement. You know, all these little things that just, you know, they slight clash when you first meet somebody. She was saying about how she's so in love with him, but there's all these clashes, there's all these little tiny things that just keep on clashing with each other. And again, that's your subconscious and their subconscious coming into fight mode effectively. And that's where all those arguments can come from. But if you have open, honest communication with the people around you, you can talk about these things, you can have a conversation with it, you can challenge each other. And if you're open to it, and you're willing to talk about these feelings and stuff, and you're willing to not fight the other person's beliefs and views, and recognize that the other person has got these subconscious things that they've grown up with throughout their lives, and their unconscious belief systems, which have been based on the environment around them. So for Olivia Rodriguez, this is her Americanism, and her boyfriend is his Englishism. That it all clashes. But if you're willing to have a look inside the other person's subconscious, and the other person is willing to look inside your subconscious, and you're willing to sort of start coming together and recognize that there's a crossover, and you can find some compromise, eventually you can join together and you can turn it into a love that will last. You've got two little subconsciouses, you start to come together, and eventually you can create love. And a deep connection, where both of your subconsciouses are working together, and you become a family, one person, where you have common beliefs and so forth. I see this all the time with my brother, because his girlfriend is Brazilian originally, and all these little things come out, like she was watching Brazilian club football the other day. It's like, wow. So in that relationship, she's the one that likes the football and wants to watch football. My brother doesn't really care about football. He's rugby, if anything, but he's not really much into sport at all. So most relationships, you'll tend to find that the man is the one that's into the sport and the woman's the one who's not interested in the sport. And in that particular relationship, it's the other way around. But they found a way to make everything work, and there's love going on there. And there's lots of other little tiny things as well. But again, what they do is they work together to find a compromise and find things that crossover, things that my brother likes about, that, and what she likes about the English side of things. And it just works. They find a way to make it work. But they're working on it. They're working together on it. So it's all just generally better. And that's how a good relationship works. Open, honest communication. That's how all these things work. And that's how these things should work. Cool. I think that's probably enough for now. I can't remember where I was going with that. No, subconscious. Just, starting about how subconscious override. I can't remember where we actually started on this. But that's how the brain works anyway. Deletion, distortion, generalization. You've got your logical brain, your subconscious brain, and your Bob Proctor. There we go. He's the guy that did the. Let me just double check on that. Bob Proctor. Stick diagram, stick figure. Here we go. Yes, was him. There you go. Conscious mind, subconscious mind, body. Yeah, okay. And that's why I put the. See, he talks about the conscious mind, the logic, and then the subconscious mind, which is the second half of the thing. So yeah, you can see his little. I'll do a little flip around so you can see his. There you go. There's his version of it. Conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the body. So same sort of thing, basically. Oops, I've got my thing stuck. And then you've got the 5 senses above there, so that's that. And thinking of, so that's your thinking, then your feeling, and actually I see somebody here doing the vibrations in here. That's your soul, your heart. So yeah, exactly the same sort of things really, except that I always say that this little bit here is your unconscious, your brain, your deep feelings, your etc. So yeah, that's it. A little bit about the neuroscience of the brain and how your body and subconscious and unconscious brain work. That's it for today. Take care. Go and enjoy the Wimbledon. I'm watching Miss Cartel, who is an English lady who took the first set against Ostapenko, who's the 20th seed. And Cartel has... Oh, she's broken her in the first game of the third set. Ooh, it's going to be an exciting match. I'm going to go watch that while I'm doing some other stuff. AI Cody type things and bits and pieces. All right, cool. That is all from me. Take care of yourselves. Mwah. Sending you all the love. Mwah. Remember, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Go out and enjoy it and love it. Remember to do your breathing exercise as well. 5 in through your nose. Hand on your heart. Hold your breath while you light your candles on your left hand and then blow out the candles on your left hand. Happy birthday to you.